Hey everyone, Doug here at the Jewelry Monk Studio, trying a little something different today. Usually I'll come to you with some tips, just kind of quick tips, 5-10 minutes in and out. Today I'm actually working on some projects and I'm just going to let the camera run and let you see what I'm doing. So I got this repair in, and it was actually a bracelet, and it had this stone set in here, and then it had a big bracelet. Here's pieces and parts of the bracelet. Well, they want to take this bracelet and turn it into a pendant. So I have to pop the stone out and do some soldering on it. Well, the bezel itself, I don't know if you can see it, but it was all cracked and broken and stuff. So I actually cut half of it off, and I'm going to replace it with some fresh silver. So that's kind of what I'm doing today. So right now I'm grinding the rest of this bezel off, and we'll replace it with some fresh bezel, and then reset the stone, put a bail on it and stuff. So I'll just kind of let you hang out and watch how I do this. And yeah, so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm kind of looking forward to doing some more of this stuff in the future, maybe even do some live events where I just turn the camera on as I'm working on things and kind of interact with everybody. This one is just kind of, I'm just going to show you the video, but be looking forward to doing a little bit more stuff. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. So let me turn the camera down, and as I'm working on this, I'm going to explain somewhat of what I'm doing here. Let me get some of these job bags out of the way. Okay, so what I'm going to do is take a cylinder burr and grind the rest of this off of there, and then form this to set in the area that's actually not good. So might be a little bit noisy, but that's all right. This is a cylinder burr. It's actually, I think they call this a rotary file. It's pretty aggressive, but if you take your time, and it works well. So again, just trying to get rid of this bad bezel. And I've got a little bit of burr life. This is actually a mixture of lubricant that William Cobb made for me. He toys around with some different burr lubricants, and he sent me a sample, and I kind of like it. So I've been working with it for a while. Again, just kind of roughing this out, getting rid of it. You can see some of that stuff is just kind of starting to flake away a little bit. So that's what I want. I want to get through the bezel. So on the other side of the bezel, there's a rope that goes around it. So I want to get through the bezel just till I get to the rope. And then that should give me enough room to put that new bezel in. All right, I think I'm there. Get rid of, this is just an old toothbrush that I probably had for 15, 20 years. I just use it as my small bench brush. Just a soft toothbrush. You can see it's been around. I still brush my teeth with it from time to time. Not really. Okay, so now I'm gonna trim. I'm gonna form this and trim it a little bit long, and then I'm gonna kind of sneak up on it as I'm getting the final fit. So So right, and I always got little Sharpies at my bench so I can make quick marks. So I just put a little mark there, and then I'm just gonna clip that off with my Lindstroms. These ones have been around a while too. You can see they're not as long as they used to be. The tips got little chips, so I have to grind it down. They still work good, but they've seen better days. But they're my favorite clippers. They're a semi-flush clipper that just works really good for giving this a flat edge. So what I'm going to do here is, to get this formed, I'm just going to take the end of my mandrel, my ring mandrel, and just kind of bend it around. That'll just kind of get it close. That's all I'm looking for right now, is just to get it close. So that's getting close right there. So I'm going to mark this again. Whenever I clip these, I always put my thumb on this end of it so that whatever I clip doesn't go flying across the room or hit me in the eye. So, because my eyes are not for deflecting things. All right. So now we're getting real close. So make sure that I got this end here is going to be my bottom end, so I'm just going to take a number 2 flat hand file and just put a flat edge on it. So just so that when it lays down in there, it's somewhat flush, so that the solder doesn't have such of a gap to fill. And as I'm working here, I might have to put the camera on pause at some point, because I'm in my shop and it is Saturday and I'm open for customers. So every once in a while, customers will walk in the door picking up repairs or dropping off repairs, or just shopping, because I've got retail stuff as well. So if that happens, I'm just going to hit pause and then I'll resume afterwards. But it'll be seamless. You won't really know, because I can edit this video. Right now we're not doing live stuff, so I can edit things to make it look seamless. So, okay, here we go. So first I'm going to, where I trim these edges off, I'm going to have to make them flat. It's hard to get in there with a file to do that, so I've got a flat graver. This is a number 5 flat graver. And I'm just going to go in and put a flat edge on this end. And then also where this, the area that I cut apart, when I put the bezel up into it, it's got to lay down in there. So I want to make sure that the edge, that it is nice and flush, and there's room in there for the bezel to come in. That'll work. And on the other side as well. This piece has been around the block a little bit. It's pretty beat up and stuff, but that doesn't mean I can't do the best job that I can with what I have to work with. So now I'm just going to take this same graver and just kind of go around this edge here and just clean it up and trim it up a little bit. All right, and then I've got a smaller graver. This is a number 41 flat graver, and I'm just going to kind of get in there and just, again, chisel this area out and make room for the new bezel to sit in there flush. Try and hold this so that you can kind of see what I'm doing. All right, so now I'm going to get rid of this big old burr, the rotary file burr, and I'm going to put a smaller finishing burr on there, a cylinder finishing burr, if I can find it. Here we go. This is probably a 1.2 millimeter finishing burr. It's a cylinder burr, but it's just got more teeth, which makes it less aggressive. But I'm just going to do that to clean up this inside edge. There we go. All right, so now we can work on the final fit here. This end looks pretty flush. This other end I've got to take just a little bit off. So I'm just gonna trim just a little. I'm gonna flatten this edge. This is a number 4 hand file. You can kind of see I'm just putting a flat edge on there. Do that on the other side as well. So you have to leave comments in here just to let me know if you've made it this far, if you're still watching, and if this is the kind of content you like to do, because if it is, I'm going to do a lot more of it. I kind of made a decision in my business that I want to get back to doing a lot more of this stuff, what I used to do. I used to really enjoy it, and then my business changed direction a little bit, and I focused on custom jewelry and repairs and production jewelry, and that stuff is nice and fun, but it can at times not be so fun. As fun as this stuff that I enjoy doing, the teaching and the videos and the handing down of information. So I made a conscious decision that I'm going to do a little bit more of that this year. Just again, that's what I enjoy doing, and it seems like it's needed. A lot of people are wanting to get more into the jewelry making, and it's hard to find a good mentor. It's hard to find an apprenticeship or something. I mean, you can get into YouTube and all that stuff, but even then, it's real difficult to find good content from time to time. So it's a little disheartening for somebody that's new into jewelry making to pursue what they enjoy doing if there's not a lot other than just trial and error. There we go. So that sits in there somewhat nice. I'm going to go in and solder it, and then the ends I can clean up a little bit as well. The rest of this bezel, even though it's still there, it's got some bad areas, and but they're not real horrible. So just want to make sure that this stone is still going to fit in there. Yeah, and it's going to be close. We can, once we get it soldered in place, we can actually get in there and trim around. Yeah. I'm just gonna tweak these areas just a little bit so that they fit a little bit more flush against that rope. But luckily that rope has got a flat edge on it, so it will sit in there all right. Okay, it's just about ready to solder into place. kind of toying with the idea. I've got a way that I can do this that makes it a lot quicker, because I do have a laser welder and I could go in there and just tack laser welds on the area just to make it hold it in place so that when I solder it, it doesn't jump around. But I don't know if I want to do that, just because most of the people that are watching this video don't have a $15,000 laser welder. So I think I'm just gonna do it old school and solder it right here. So what I do when I solder is I always elevate the piece so that I can get the flame underneath it. So because the principle in soldering is solder is going to follow the heat. So if I take this and I put it on my soldering block, the soldering block is going to act as a heat sink, so it's not going to allow the solder or the heat to get to the piece where I want it to be. So if I elevate it, I can come in at different angles and get the heat and the solder to flow exactly where I want it to. So what I'm going to do is I'll get in there and flex this, and then I'm going to come in there and lay some solder on the inside, and I'm going to come in and just solder it. So let's do it. Turn my torch on, and I use a Smith little torch for just about everything. And I use Handy Flux. It's a brazing flux. This is what it looks like, and I'm just going to paint with a paintbrush the whole area that I want to solder. And what I'm going to use, as you can kind of see, I'm doing the outside first, and then I'll come in and do the inside. I'm going to use medium silver solder. I'm going to try that first. I don't know how this piece was originally assembled. Hopefully they didn't use easy solder, and I'll be able to tell once I start soldering, because if I can see solder starting to flow in areas before my solder flows, then I know that it's an easier solder than what I'm trying to use. So then I might come at it with easy solder, but for now I'm just going to use medium sheet solder, and I'm going to cut probably a half a dozen pieces that are about that big, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to lay them on the inside of that bezel and solder from underneath and pull it through the bezel to the rope side, if that makes sense. There's 5 and there's 6. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to heat up this piece just a little bit, because that flux I'm using, the Handy Flux, is a water-based flux. So if I go in right now and put all that solder in place and I start to heat it up, the flux is going to boil, and it's gonna, all that solder is going to go jumping all over the place. So I'm going to heat this up a little bit first, and you can kind of see it just starting to boil a little bit. And plus that allows it to get into all the cracks and crevices. Okay, now I'm going to drop these little pieces of solder in certain areas. And then I got my pick, so I'm going to heat this up, and as I'm heating it up, hopefully you can see what I'm doing, but as I'm heating it up and pushing the solder, I want it to make contact with the bezel and the floor of the piece, so that when it does flow, it doesn't just kind of expand on the bottom, but it pulls through. So let me see. go, starting to heat up. Just make sure that all my solder is where I want it to be. Okay, I don't know if you can see it, but it's starting to flow. I'm gonna add one more piece in this far side there. And I'm gonna come around and just follow it all the way around. Add a little bit right in the middle. There we go. All right, it's soldered. Hopefully you can kind of see what that is. Now I'm going to come in and get those seams, the end seams, next time. But I wanted to get the base in there first. I wanted to get the base in there first, and then the ends where they kind of match up together. I'm going to get in there with my pliers and make sure that those are nice and flush, and then I'll solder that seam as well. I didn't want to solder it because they're kind of like this, and it's hard to get everything lined up the way you want it to, especially when you start to heat it up. You'll see things start to move just a little bit. So I'm going to get it the foundation first, and then I'll get the ends nice and flush. So yeah, so that's, I'm going to let that sit in the pickle for a little bit. And then what I did is, this is kind of the bracelet end part of it. So I took some of that, cut it off, and I put it through my roller, and I'm going to make bezels, or not bezels, but bails, because I got that piece and then this piece as well that I got to do the same thing. So put a bail on it. So I'm making the bail out of the excess silver that was in the bracelet. So here's another project I'm working on. This was given to me by a friend. He took copper and brass or bronze and put them together, flattened them, folded it, flattened it, folded it. So it's got this really nice design. So I'm actually going to cut a section of that off and put it in this channel ring, silver channel ring that I've got. So while that's sitting in the pickle, I might as well pick up another project instead of just sitting here twiddling my thumbs waiting for the pickle to do its job. I've got another project that's going as well. So that's what I like to do, is I've got 2 or 3 different projects all the time. So I'll work on one for a little bit, and then I'll pick up another one and start working on that if I get to a place where there's a pause. So hope that makes sense. So this will be kind of cool. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm kind of excited to see. Like I said, the friend of mine that gave this to me, his name is Eli, and he made it when he was experimenting, and he said, let me flip this down a little bit, and he said, here, you can figure out something to do with it. So that's what I'm doing. It's been sitting here for a couple of years. A lot of the things I have on my bench, they'll sit there for a year, 2, 3 years, and then eventually they'll tell me what they need. They don't actually speak to me, but eventually I'll say, okay, I see what I can do with that. So, and then I'll pick it up and start on it. There's a couple of pieces I've had sitting on my bench or in piles for up to 10 years before I pick it up and get to work on it. And a lot of times I'll do that with stones and agates and things like that, where I don't know what to do with it when I get it, and I don't want to just jump into it hastily and just throw a bezel on it or something like that and make it just make it for the sake of making it. But I want it to, a lot of the pieces, I want it to be kind of special, because usually for me jewelry, it needs to tell a story, you know, or part of I guess the whole idea of jewelry is it has to do deep down with identity, and people buy jewelry so that they can tell a little bit about themselves to other people who see it. You know, that's the way I see it anyways. It's like, you know, jewelry is not just there because it's shiny and blingy, but it tells a little bit to others about the person who's wearing it. So kind of like a tattoo, you know. You don't just go out and buy a tattoo that's on sale, but you get a tattoo because it's part of your identity. You want that to tell other people about a little bit, give them a glimpse inside of you, and that's the way I see it with jewelry. So it's hard to just take a project and jump into it because it's next in line. But to me, it's got to mean something more than just shiny, you know. Hope that makes sense. I'm just kind of babbling as I'm cutting this off, but almost there. Again, I gotta take a little bit of burr life. Now this is a different kind of burr life. This is a little bit softer. And what I'll do is just rub my finger in it and then take my finger and rub it across my saw blade. I don't want a whole bunch of it on there. I just want it enough to where it doesn't catch and it cuts a little bit easier. If you put too much on there, then sometimes it'll fill in the teeth of the saw blade and it doesn't cut as well. So if that happens, then I'll just kind of take and rub my finger, rub some of that lubricant off, and then it works like it's supposed to. Just about there. You can actually hear the sound of the saw blade going through, changing pitches, and that's how I know that it's just about through. Right there. What I do is I usually cut just about so I'm all the way through, but not, and then I can just grab it and pull it off. Otherwise, it goes flying off and I got to go looking for it. So set that there for another project. I'm only going to be using this part of it. Again, you can kind of see the different colors that's in there. And I'm going to cut that down, trim it up, and fit it into this little silver channel. That'll be kind of cool. Okay, let's go into the pickle. So there's my pickle pot, just to kind of show you what it is. It's actually an old potpourri pot. That I got at the secondhand store for about $5. Probably 10 years ago. And you can still find those things at secondhand stores like Salvation Army for $5, which is kind of nice. Or you can go to your local online jewelry tool supplier and spend $100 on something that works the same. So there's the bezel in place. Now I just got to trim up these ends and make it seamless. So what I'm gonna do is just gonna take this and bend it. There we go. I don't know if you can see, but right in there's one seam. And then around it on the other side is the other seam. So I'm going to flux that up again. I'm just going to flux that area. Flux the other area. Put that back in my trusty third hand, and then cut some more solder. I'm going to use medium solder again. Now this one I'm going to cut 3 pieces, even though I'm only going to use 2, because what's probably going to happen is I'm going to end up dropping one of them, and instead of stopping and looking for it, I'll just have an extra one ready to go. If I plan for it, I won't drop it, but if I don't plan for it, I will drop it. So I'm going to take my pick, soldering pick, and I'm just going to touch the flux, the wet flux, and then I can go over here and pick up my solder. Pretty cool. And I'm going to solder on the outside of that bezel, because if I solder it on the inside, it's going to leave a little bump against the stone, and I'll have to clean that up. But if I come in and put the solder on the outside of the bezel, then the bump will be on the outside, and it's a little easier to clean up. Here's the other piece of solder. I'm gonna add that right there, if I can get it there. Right there. Okay, so now I'm gonna heat it from the inside to pull that solder through. Remember, principle I said, solder follows heat. So if I put the heat on the inside, the solder is going to flow all the way through that solder joint. And it doesn't take much heat because these bezels are real thin. So you just got to really be careful with your heat so that you don't melt the bezel. This torch could be a little bit more oxygen. And there it's starting to flow. And then I can see it on the inside. So there's one of them. You can see I add the heat, I pull it away, add it, pull it away. So I'm slowly creeping up on it. There it's starting to flow, and there it goes. All right, now I can put it back in a pickle. So now I got that new bezel in place, and now it's just a matter of going in with some burrs and files and cleaning it all up, and getting it ready to set. So I've also got to make a bail. So I'm just going to take this metal that I showed you earlier, and I'm going to make a bail out of it. So I'm just going to make a simple bail. I'm going to find something, let's see. One of the things that I teach people is if you've got a project or something that you have to do, and you don't necessarily have all of the exact tools that you need to do it, don't let that stop you. Don't say, I can't do that because I don't have this tool or that tool. But just take a look at your surrounding area and adapt and say, okay, how am I going to get the job done with the tools that are in front of me? And I'm telling you, 99% of the time, you can figure it out. So here's a piece of brass wire. So I'm just going to take this and bend that around. And look at that, there's a bail. Amazing. Call that a bail forming tool. Most people call it brass wire or brass rod. But for the time being, it's a bail forming tool. So I'm gonna trim this up just a little bit. There we you go. So there's the bail. And I'll just solder it. I'm gonna clean that up and I'm gonna solder it onto the top of that pendant, and voila, it goes from a bracelet to a pendant. So let me pull that out of the pickle. And whenever you use pickle, which is available through your jewelry tool supplier, you always want to use copper tongs, because if you put steel in the pickling solution, which is sodium bisulfate, I think it is, it'll neutralize the pickle, and eventually you'll put silver pieces in there and you'll let them sit in there, and they'll get copper coated because it's been neutralized by the steel. You don't never put steel in a pickle solution, always copper or silver or gold. So there is my bezel. You can see there's the solder joint. I'll clean that up. There's the other solder joint. The inside, nice and flush. So I am going to go steam this off real quick. So yeah, I'll take you with me. I was gonna do that, but here's my little steam. I got a big steam machine, and then I got a little, call it a steam dragon. So see, you can kind of see it. Rawr, there's the dragon. Here's my jewelry bench. All right. Everything looks really good. So I'm gonna come and instead of going on that with the file, I'm gonna use a snap-on sanding disc and clean up the outside of that bezel. Pull this down like that. And just grinding it down or sanding it down so that it's nice and flush. And there's the other. You can kind of see how I just sanded that little area off. That one as well, nice and flush. I can come in with my number 4 hand file, and I'm just gonna make that top edge nice and uniform. One side of this bezel was a little higher than the other, so I've got to take that down. A lot of people on their big hand files and stuff, they'll put handles on them. So you right on here, you'll have a big old wooden handle that you hold and file this way. I don't necessarily like that for me, just because I want to be able to feel my work. So if I could get my hands as close to the work as possible. So I put a little rubber end on here so that I put that in my hand and it doesn't hurt. So I put that in my hand, and then I'll put my index finger on the top of the file, and then my middle finger and my thumb on the other side of the file. So as I'm filing, every time I take a file swipe, I use the light reflection, and I look to see what my file is doing and where it's cutting, so then I can make adjustments as I'm filing, so I can rotate it this way or that way, or put a little bit more pressure here or there. So it's a little bit easier for me to see what my file is doing, because I don't want to sit there and do this, but every file stroke is intentional. And after each one, you're looking to see, you're rotating the piece, and you're looking at the light reflection to see what your file is doing, so that
as you're getting the metal down, you want to see what your tool is doing. You don't just want to just use the tool and just not think about it. But again, everything needs to be intentional. It's kind of along the lines of, people ask me why I chose the name Jewelry Monk. And I say, well, one of it is I was looking for a name that is easy to remember. Also wanted something that kind of captures the things in my life that are important. Jewelry making, I've been doing it for over 40 years. And then also my spiritual life is very important to me as well. So I wanted to kind of capture that. And I always thought, I'm not a monk and I don't necessarily know that much about monks, but I know that they deeply believe what they believe, and there's a certain discipline that they take on when they've entered into that lifestyle. And with me, same thing with jewelry, there's a certain discipline. You got to make sure your tools are clean and correct. And like I said, when I'm filing, everything is intentional. When I'm soldering, everything has a reason to it. And that kind of in a nutshell, that explains what I do and why I like to do it. So now I'm just looking to make sure that bezel is going to fit in there, so it's a little bit tight right in here. I don't want to push that stone down too far, because once I get it in, then it's not going to come out. So I'm going to tap it a little bit, get it out of there. And a lot of times what I'll do is let me show you real quick. Hold on. Whenever I go to the dentist, they always give me dental floss. And I like this flat, really thin stuff, because you can put it across your piece and then you put your stone in place to see how it's going to fit. And if you don't do this and then you push it in there, and it's like, how am I going to get that out of there? But if you have this dental floss, you can just grab it and pull the stone out. So that's what I use the free dental floss from the dentist for. There's your tip of the day right there. So now I'm going to come in with my trusty rotary file. And actually what I'm going to do first is I'm going to flatten this piece, because I noticed that it's got a little bit of a bow to it. If you look at it, it's kind of bowed. So I'm just going to come in there and flatten it. And what I'm going to do is, this is just a wooden dowel. So I'm just going to let me get these stones out of the way. There we go. So I'm going to take this wooden dowel and a small chasing hammer and just kind of tap the floor of this. It's the base of it's pretty thin, so it's easily manipulated. Let's see if that's going to work. Yeah, so now you can see it's a little bit more stable. All right, that stone is going to fit in there. Let's just come in. What I'm doing right now is the little excess solder. When I soldered it in, there's a little bit on the bottom and a little bit on the side. I'm just cleaning that up. Otherwise, when you go to set the stone, you're going to have excess solder there that's going to be like a bump, or just not allow the stone to seat properly.
this is a piece of wicked sticky wax, and I use that for stones. So I can take this and like that, it goes right down in there. Beauty. Now, put my dowel back. My bench is an absolute mess, but I know where everything is. I know there's a pile of tools over here and a pile of tools over there, but when I'm working and I'm looking down, I can look up and know exactly where my beret file is. Or I know where my graver is. It's in a pile in a certain section, you know. And every once in a while, I clean my bench, but every time I get done with a tool, I always put it in the same place so that I don't have to think about where I put it. So, yeah, there's another tip that's free. Look at all these free tips you're getting. Okay, so I'm gonna take this and I'm just gonna clip a little bit of that off. So there's that bezel that I made, and I left a little tail on there. I don't know if you can kind of see it, but that's how I'm gonna mount that on there. It's just make that fit on there like that, and then just solder it. And after it's soldered, I can go in and blend it all in. But I'm gonna use that same rotary file that I was using because I'll use a Sharpie real quick. On the top edge of this bale, I want it to be a little bit radiused. You can see kind of like that, because I want that to sit up flush against the radius of this. So, I mean, we could do it flat, but then you just have to use more solder to fill that gap, and I don't like to use a whole bunch of solder. So now I'm just gonna come in and slowly put a little bit of a radius to that top edge. There we go. That's gonna look good. I'm gonna take this and bend that a little bit. All right, now I'm gonna take the end of this bale and just soften it up a little bit. Meaning taking the sharp edges off and making it a little bit more rounded. So again, if you guys, it's been 45 minutes into this video or more, 48 minutes. If you guys enjoy this content, leave a comment, let me know. Because if I get enough comments, I'll do a lot more of this stuff. But if I hear crickets, then I probably won't do a whole bunch of this stuff anymore. Okay, so now I'm just lining this up just to make sure everything is centered the way I want it. Then I'm gonna put a little Sharpie mark on there. I don't know if you can see it, but just put a little mark there just so that I know. Now what I'm gonna do on the other side, because the Sharpie mark's on the front, but I can't really see what's on the back, but I'm just gonna take my little awl and scribe a line right there. Just, I don't know if you can see that, but that's, so because when I solder this, it's gonna be sitting upside down, and I wanna make sure that that's centered, so I'm just gonna do that. And again, I've got a laser welder where I could go over and just tack this in place and make it easy, but that wouldn't be particularly helpful for everyone, because
Again, not everybody has a laser welder. So I'm just trying to figure out how to mount this so that you can see what's going on a little bit easier. I'm putting my third hand on top of all my burrs and stuff over here, but that's gonna work. Okay. Now, whenever you're soldering, I always look at your bench, and your bench pin, think of it as the center of your universe. Everything you do is on your bench pin. Same thing with soldering. So when I'm soldering, I've put my hand on my bench pin to stabilize it. Otherwise, if I don't, I'm sitting there shaking and trying to get everything done. But if I put my hand here and stabilize it, then I can hold my piece relatively still. And then wherever this fits comfortably. So my hand is in a comfortable position. My tweezers are here. So now I'm going to move my work to that area so that I don't have to be reaching and getting in weird shapes, but now everything is comfortable. I can solder and not have to fight the system, if that makes any sense. So always think about that whenever you're filing and you're holding tweezers. Put your hand on your bench pin and it's like, okay, where does everything fall naturally? And that's where I'm going to bring my work so that it just makes it a little bit easier. So I just dip that into my flux, and now I'm just going to rub that on there. And then again, I'm using medium solder. I'm going to cut a piece about that big, see? And then I'm gonna lay that right there. And so since this is a lot more mass, I'm gonna end up heating this up first. And then I'm gonna add my piece to it. So remember I talked about dropping your solder? Well, that's exactly what I just did. I should have cut two pieces, because if I would have cut two pieces, I wouldn't drop my solder. But since I didn't, I heard it hit, and now I can't see where it went. So now I gotta cut another piece of solder. And then right after I get that cut, then I'll find my piece of solder that I cut originally. Okay, here we go. So what I'm gonna do is take this solder and that flux, when it heats up, it acts like kind of like it glazes over, and it actually kind of gets sticky. So I just put that solder right there and it's holding in place. Now I can take this piece and heat it up. And I always hold my breath when I'm soldering, so don't talk to me. There she goes. Now I just want to make sure that it's flowing wherever I need it to flow. So the back of it is nice and done, but the front of it is not flowed yet. So I'm gonna add a little flux right there. Okay, here's a piece of solder. I'm just gonna set that on there. Do my pick and just slowly heat that up. There it is.
And also, as you guys are watching this, if you have any questions or comments or anything, go ahead and put them in the comment section, and I always answer anybody who gets a hold of me. So it might be a little bit, but usually I get to people pretty quick when I'm answering project or product questions. All right. Well, right now I'm going to take a stop, and I will I'll turn the video back on after I get ready to set the stone. So I'm just going to take the piece, and I'm going to get it ready to set the stone. So I will come back in a little bit. It'll be seamless. You won't even know the difference. So. All right, I'm back, and you didn't even know I was gone. All right, so got the bales soldered on it. I soldered the bale on the other one as well. I'm just gonna clean them up a little bit with my snap-on sanding disc. And then I am going to blacken them with liver of sulfur, and then high polish the edges so that it's nice and shiny, and then set the stones. So rotate this down. A little bit of a different angle. I switched camera positions just so you can see a little bit differently. So I'm just, again, this is my snap-on sanding disc. Actually, I'm gonna take my number 4 file, hand file, and I'm gonna flatten up the edges first. Now on a number 4 hand file, you gotta be aware. There's always one side that's a safety side, and then one side that's got teeth on it. So on this, I want the safety side up against the piece. So setting it there so when I file it, I'm not cutting into the piece itself with the edge of the file. So like I said, you can see the safe side is up against the piece as I'm filing rather than the cutting edge. Hope that makes sense. I'm just giving this edge a little bit of a flatness, and then I'll blend it in a second. All right, just a little bit of a flat area there, and then when I polish that, it'll look better. Now, when I did that on the inside edge, there's like a little bit of a burr there. So I've got these knives that I use, the scalpels, and I use them for cutting silver sometimes. So I'm going to stick it in that little hole, the bale hole, and I'm just going to trim that edge a little bit. Remember, always cut towards yourself. Wait, you always cut away from yourself, don't you? Yeah. There we go. Trim out the other edge. And I'm not cutting much. I'm just taking off that little bit of a burr there from filing. Now I can come in with my snap-on sanding disc. This is like a medium grit. And just kind of blending everything in. A little bit of excess solder there. I'm just taking care of that. Kind of see what I'm doing here. And again, if you look at what I'm doing with my hand, remember this is my universe right here. I got my little finger there supporting everything that I'm doing so that it's a lot more stable. So get in the habit of always supporting your hands on your bench pin. It'll make things so much easier. Because that's one of the battles is trying to figure out, especially with people who get a little bit shaky and stuff, trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to do that? Remember, stabilize with your bench pin. And eventually, if you do it enough, it'll just become natural. You don't even think about it. I didn't even think about it until I looked up to the camera and I seen my finger there. And I thought, oh yeah, remind people, your universe is your bench pin and you want to be stabilized to the universe. All right, there's a bale. Kind of the same idea. That's what I did with the other one. Same thing. They didn't want anything fancy. They just wanted something that they could wear is, again, this one had a little bit of a loop there, and it wasn't very big. And this one here was a bracelet. So next, I'm going to do a little bit of pre-polish on the bales just to get rid of the sanding, and then we will blacken them with the liver of sulfur, and then polish them up and set the stones. Now you can polish at the bench with your handpiece, your Dremel, or your Fordham. I like to use my big wheel just because it's I've got it hooked up to ventilation, so it pulls away all of the stuff, so I don't have to breathe it. Now I'm going to use this is it's a pre-polish on a yellow wheel. The pre-polish is called bobbing compound, and it's real aggressive, so it'll take out those scratches there. And then after that, we'll clean it up and we'll blacken it, and then get on with setting the stones and making it look pretty. There you go. I just cleaned up those bales, made them a little bit more shiny, taking out the scratches and stuff. So now we'll clean this up, and we'll get on to blackening them. All right, here is the liver of sulfur that I use, and it comes in actually like a rocks. Don't use much, just find a small piece in here. There we go. Probably can't even see how much that is in there. This is my hot water that I just use in my tea. And add a little bit of water. You can see it kind of turns kind of brownish. Stick it. Here's my pieces. Drop one in there. Drop the other one in there. You can see pretty quickly they turn black. Then I'll just stir them up a little bit, pull them out, clean them off. Here's the pieces after they're blackened. Now I'm just going to take them to a polishing wheel, polish off the high side, put some shine into it, but all that black, it's actually like a gunmetal gray, but it'll stay in the little cracks and crevices, give it some nice definition and contrast. So a little bit, this is just a softer wheel. I'm going to use the same bobbing compound. Kind of see it. I'm not looking for a high polish right now. I'm just looking to take away a lot of the excess, and then after I set the stone, then I'll do a final polish on it. Now this is a jet set ballistic. That's what I use to stabilize the piece to set. So you can heat it up in hot water. That's what they recommend, is like 160 degrees. Or what I like to do is just take a heating gun and just, you want to be careful. You don't want to overheat it and burn it, but you can heat it up enough to where it gets soft. It's kind of like silly putty when it gets soft, and you can push the piece into it and it stabilizes it and holds it really well. This stuff has got Kevlar in it, so it's really stable, but don't shoot yourself. It will not protect bullets. So then, nice and soft, a little bit, and then I'll take that, stick it in there, press down, I'll kind of form it around there just a little bit, but it holds the piece so that I can get in there and press on it and work on the bezel without it trying to hold it in place. So I'll let this cool for about 5 minutes and we'll set the stone. All right, back at the bench, got the pieces cleaned up, ready to set the stones. So the neat thing that I've got here is called a GRS Benchmate. So this is my universe, but for now we're gonna put the universe away and pull out this contraption. It is part of the GRS system. So now I got a little bit more control over how I'm going to set that stone. So you can see it's still just a little warm, but it'll hold it in place. So take that stone, drop it in place like that, nice and firm. Now this is a prong pusher, and this is a bezel roller. I'm actually going to use the bezel roller first and just kind of, I'm going to go in segments. So I'm kind of like, say, 12 o'clock and 10 o'clock and 8 o'clock and 6 o'clock, around there. And then once I get the stone stabilized, then I can go in and roll the rest. So especially if you're working with stones that have sharp corners like squares or even pear shape, you always want to start at the corners first, because otherwise it's going to bunch up on you and you're not going to be happy with how the end result is, because it's going to kink and bunch up. But always start with your the sharpest corners first, and then work your way towards the flat area. And just kind of going around and rolling that bezel in place. The old bezel is pretty easy because it's real thin. It's probably 3/10 of a millimeter thick. I don't know what that is in gauge. I don't work in gauge, I work in millimeters. But the new bezel is probably just like 4.5 of a millimeter thick. So it's just a little thicker, but it's still easy to form around the stone. Just about there. Be careful. Oh, so what I do on my bezel roller on this edge here, you can see it's kind of roughed up a little bit, and I take a piece of sandpaper, usually like a 400 grit sandpaper or something like that, and then I will rough that edge up just a little bit, because if it's nice and smooth, you'll notice what I just did when I'm pushing it, it's kind of slipped off. But if you rough it up just a little bit, it'll actually grip a little bit better to the bezel. It won't leave any tool marks, but it'll stabilize it, and you'll have a lot less slipping off of there. You don't want to damage a stone. Luckily, when I slipped off, it just kind of went across and didn't hurt anything. But I do that on that, and even on my bezel, or my prong pusher, same thing. It's roughed up on that edge. So, and it doesn't have to be a whole bunch, but it just enough to where it grabs into the metal a little bit, but it doesn't leave tool marks. So.
And just like that,
The stone is set.
so now the existing bezel on the very edge, it has
Like a mill grain finish on there. I've only got one mill grain tool. I'm not sure if that's gonna be the same size or not.
It might work. Yeah,
It's working. It's just about the same size. So what this is just a little mill grain roller, and you put it on that top edge. It's kind of hard to see what it is, but
you put it on the top edge and you roll it around, and it leaves like little beads or little balls on the very top of the bezel, and it just adds a little bit of detail to the bezel, just kind of a finishing touch. Just go around and around.
And there we go. There is our stone that is set.
So now I'm going to see if I can pop this up there. No, it's grabbing just a little bit, so I'll heat this up just a little bit. It'll release that, and then I'll take this to the polishing wheel. So after looking at the piece, I don't like how the mill grain matched. It's just a little bit too small. So I'm going to take a beading tool, this is my beading tool set. And I've got just one beading tool, and I'm actually going to go around the top of it and put little beads on there with my hammer. And it matches up a little bit better than the mill grain tool that was just a little bit too small. And I'm just laying it right next to one another, and it's matching a lot better. So I'll sleep a little bit better tonight knowing that this mill grain matches. Again, it's looking at the job you want to do and the tools that you have in front of you and saying, how can I accomplish that? So I didn't have the correct mill grain tool, but this is going to work just about exactly the same.
All right, much happier with that. So actually, I'm gonna see if I can pop this out of there. There we go. Comes out now to the polishing machine, and this will be ready to go. I got the pieces out. I'm going to put a final polish on them. I'm using a green polishing compound. It's like Zam on a softer wheel. Well, there's it. You got to see from the beginning, close to the beginning to the end of repairing these things and turning them back into something that they can enjoy one more time. So again, thanks for hanging out. Hopefully you stayed till the end. And if you do like content like this, let me know, because I enjoy doing it. But if I don't get a lot of feedback, then I'll do it less and less. But if I get positive feedback, people are excited, people actually learn something and can apply it, that motivates me to do a lot more stuff. And moving forward, I'm kind of transitioning my business model. I want to get back to a lot more training and sharing of information and a lot less production style jewelry. Even though we're all set up here to do production, we've got 3 lines of jewelry that we produce as well, but I enjoy the teaching, the training, and stuff like that. So we're gonna, if we get some good feedback and you guys enjoy this, we'll do a lot more of it. So thanks for hanging out. Check out a lot more of the content that we have. We've got over 100 free videos at this YouTube channel, and we'll be making more. Thanks again for hanging out. Again, my name is Doug Napier. I am the Jewelry Monk. So take care. Until next time.